The metallic screech of tearing metal pierced through the morning silence at JFK International Airport. Amelia Bennett's hands trembled as she stared at the airplane door she had just accidentally triggered into emergency lock mode. 787's cabin lights flickered ominously, and the aircraft shuddered against its moorings like a caged animal. "What have you done?" The flight attendant's voice cracked with barely controlled panic as he rushed toward her, his usually pristine uniform already wrinkled with nervous sweat. Amelia's throat constricted. "I was just trying to reach my bag. It was falling, and I grabbed what I thought was the overhead compartment latch." Her voice sounded foreign to her own ears, high and desperate. From seat 1A, a man's voice cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. "Let me understand this correctly." He closed his MacBook with deliberate precision, each movement calculated and cold. "You have just locked down an aircraft carrying 247 passengers, delaying a flight that should have departed 6 minutes ago?" Ryan Gray stood slowly, his 6'2" frame unfolding with predatory grace. At 34, he had built an empire, by reading people's weaknesses in seconds, and right now, every instinct screamed that the trembling woman before him was about to cost him everything. The Tom Ford suit he wore cost more than most people's cars, but it wasn't the clothing that made passengers instinctively step back. It was the Arctic calculation in his pale blue eyes. The way he moved like winter itself had taken human form. "Sir, we're working to resolve this immediately," the flight attendant stammered. But Ryan's gaze never left Amelia's face. She lifted her chin despite the heat burning up her neck. "It was an accident. I've never flown first class before. I didn't know that handle would trigger a security lockdown."
"Accidents,"
Ryan said, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than a shout, "have consequences." The captain's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing what everyone already knew. Technical crews were boarding. Passengers would be evacuated. The flight was indefinitely delayed. Around them, chaos erupted. Businessmen shouted into phones about missed meetings. Families with small children gathered their belongings with resigned frustration. But in the eye of this storm, Ryan and Amelia stood frozen in a bubble of tension, so thick it felt suffocating. 3 hours, Ryan said when the door finally surrendered to the emergency technicians. 3 hours of my life because you decided to play with equipment you didn't understand. Amelia's Latina blood finally overrode her embarrassment. "Listen here, Prince Charming. I understand you're upset, but treating me like I'm some kind of criminal isn't going to fix anything." Something flickered in Ryan's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or interest. But it vanished so quickly she might have imagined it. "You're right," he said, and for a moment she thought he might actually apologize. Instead, his lips curved into something that might have been a smile, if smiles could draw blood. "Treating you like a criminal would be too lenient." "What's that supposed to mean?" Ryan picked up his briefcase, the leather so pristine it seemed to absorb light. "The next flight to Los Angeles departs tomorrow at 6 p.m. You're coming with me." Amelia blinked. "I'm sorry, what? You delayed my life? Now you get to be part of it." He extended his hand with the casual confidence of someone who had never been refused anything. 3 days in Los Angeles, $50,000. The number hit her like a physical blow. $50,000 was more than she'd earned in the past 18 months combined. It was enough to pay off her student loans, enough to finally move out of the shoebox apartment she shared with 2 roommates, enough to change everything. "This is insane," she whispered, but found herself taking his hand anyway. His skin was surprisingly warm, surprisingly rough for someone who lived in boardrooms and corner offices. "Amelia Bennett," she said quickly, releasing his grip before her brain could process how right it had felt. "I know exactly who you are, Miss Bennett." Ryan's smile sharpened. "Environmental consultant, master's degree from Columbia. Currently 3 months behind on rent and living on credit card advances. My research team is very thorough." The blood drained from her face. "How did you, the same way I know you speak 4 languages, graduated summa cum laude and turned down 3 corporate offers to work for a nonprofit that pays you barely enough to survive?" He leaned closer and she caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something darker, more dangerous. "You fascinate me, Miss Bennett. I don't fascinate easily. I have a life. I can't just disappear to Los Angeles with a stranger." course you can. Your next client meeting isn't until Thursday. Your rent is due Friday, and unless I'm mistaken, you need this money more than you need your pride." He was right, and they both knew it. The worst part was how casually he dissected her entire existence, reducing her to a series of financial vulnerabilities and professional disappointments. "What exactly would I be doing for you?" "Whatever I need you to do." His phone buzzed, and he glanced at it with practiced efficiency. "My driver will collect you tomorrow at 4 p.m. or something that won't embarrass either of us." He walked toward the gate, leaving her standing in the wreckage of her carefully planned day. Just before he disappeared into the crowd, he turned back. "Oh, and Miss Bennett, next time you want to ground an aircraft, make sure there isn't an A. New York billionaire on board? We tend to complicate things." Amelia stared after him, her heart hammering against her ribs. In 28 years of life, she had perfected the art of small disasters. But this felt different. It felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing that one more step would change everything forever. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Don't overthink it. Sometimes the best decisions are the ones that terrify us most." She looked up at the departure board, watching flights to destinations she'd only dreamed of visiting. Los Angeles glowed on the screen like a promise or a threat. "What have I gotten myself into?" she whispered to the empty gate. But as she gathered her things and walked toward the exit, Amelia Bennett couldn't shake the feeling that for the first time in her life, something extraordinary was about to happen. Whether it would save her or destroy her remained to be seen. The black Tesla Model S sliced through Los Angeles traffic with the silence of a predator stalking prey. Amelia pressed her face against the tinted window, watching the city unfold in layers of gold and shadow. The Hollywood sign perched like a crown on distant hills, palm trees swayed in the California breeze, and the Pacific stretched toward infinity beyond the urban sprawl. "First time in L.A.?" Ryan asked, without looking up from his tablet, his fingers moving across the screen with surgical precision. "Is it that obvious?" Amelia traced patterns on the glass, leaving fingerprints she quickly wiped away. "You're practically vibrating with excitement. Most people who travel with me are either catatonic with boredom or paralyzed by fear. Which category do I fall into?" For the first time since boarding their private jet 6 hours earlier, Ryan looked at her directly. Really looked. Her dark hair caught the afternoon light streaming through the sunroof. Her olive skin seemed to glow against the Tesla's cream leather interior. Those expressive brown eyes held a mixture of wonder and defiance that made something uncomfortable shift in his chest. "I haven't decided yet." Truth was more complex than he cared to admit. Amelia Bennett had spent the entire flight systematically dismantling every assumption he'd made about her. She spoke fluent French to the flight attendant, negotiating a better wine selection, while he'd been stuck with subpar champagne. She'd handled a conference call in Spanish with what sounded like a client in Barcelona, then switched seamlessly to Italian when the hotel called to confirm their reservations. She was an enigma wrapped in designer knockoffs and middle-class sensibilities, and Ryan Gray didn't like enigmas. They were unpredictable, dangerous. "So what exactly am I supposed to do as your personal assistant?" Amelia made air quotes around the title, because I should mention, I don't do coffee runs, dry cleaning, or anything involving your personal laundry preferences. Ryan's lips twitched despite himself. "Careful, Miss Bennett. Your New York attitude is showing. Better than billionaire passive aggression, touché?" The Tesla glided up to the Beverly Hills Hotel, and Amelia's breath caught audibly. The iconic pink facade gleamed like a jewel against the LA skyline, with valets in pristine uniforms. Positioned beside perfectly manicured palm trees like extras in a movie about old Hollywood glamour. "Holy hell," she whispered. "I don't think he's on the guest list," Ryan said dryly, stepping out of the car, "but I'll see what I can do." Despite everything, Amelia laughed. "Did you just make a joke? I've been known to have a sense of humor. It's buried somewhere beneath the quarterly reports and hostile takeovers." The lobby was a temple to a more elegant era. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across marble floors, and Amelia felt criminally underdressed despite having maxed out her credit card on a new outfit the night before. "Mr. Gray, The concierge approached with the reverence usually reserved. For heads of state, your usual bungalow is ready, and the adjoining suite for Miss Bennett, Amelia supplied, pronouncing it slowly. Be Anani Teet, of course. Welcome to the Beverly Hills Hotel, Miss Bennett. Adjoining suites? Amelia hissed as they walked through gardens that belonged in architectural magazines. Would you prefer the poolside cabana? I hear the lounge chairs are surprisingly comfortable for overnight stays. I know what you meant. Ryan gestured toward a private bungalow nestled among towering palms. Relax, Miss Bennett. Your virtue is safe. I have enough complications in my life without adding sexual harassment lawsuits to the mix. The bungalow was a world apart from anything Amelia had ever experienced. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the Hollywood Hills. The furnishings blended classic Hollywood elegance with modern minimalism so perfectly it hurt to look at. Fresh orchids adorned every surface, and the air carried the scent of jasmine mixed with something indefinably expensive. This is where you stay when you're in Los Angeles? Amelia wandered to the windows, pressing her palms against the cool glass.
Ow.
One of the places. Ryan loosened his tie, the first genuinely casual gesture she'd seen him make. The company maintains residences in 12 cities worldwide. Must be nice to have so many homes. Must be nice to have one that actually feels like home. Words slipped out before he could stop them, and Amelia turned to study his profile. For just a moment, his carefully constructed mask had cracked, revealing something raw and achingly lonely underneath. Where's home for you? She asked softly. Ryan's jaw tightened like a steel trap. I wouldn't know. I left at 16 and never looked back. Why? Because home was a place where people disappointed you, let you down, usually in that order. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken histories and carefully buried pain. Amelia wanted to ask more, to understand what had turned this brilliant man into such a fortress of controlled emotion. But before she could speak, his phone rang with the aggressive urgency of crisis. Gray. His voice was crisp, professional, all traces of vulnerability instantly erased. No. Reschedule the Barcelona meeting. Yes, I know what time it is there. Because I pay you to handle these things, Sarah, not to question my judgment. He listened. For a moment, his expression growing increasingly thunderous. What do you mean she's here? A pause that felt like the space between lightning and thunder. Tell me you didn't, Sarah. Tell me you didn't give my mother this hotel address. Amelia watched his face cycle through what looked like panic, fury, and something that might have been fear if billionaires were capable of such mundane emotions. How long ago? He was already moving toward the door, his entire body coiled with barely contained energy. Christ, fine, stall her. Order room service. Charge her phone. Do whatever it takes to keep her in the lobby for 20 minutes. He ended the call and turned to Amelia with an expression that could have flash-frozen the Pacific Ocean. Change of plans. We're leaving now. What? Why? Who was questions later, moving now. He was already throwing his belongings into his briefcase with military efficiency. Hey. There's a woman downstairs who has made it her life's mission to complicate mine, and if she gets within 50 feet of this room, your 3-day LA adventure becomes a 3-day family therapy session. Your mother? My mother? He spit the words like they tasted toxic. Trust me when I say that meeting her would make accidentally locking down a commercial aircraft seem like a minor social faux pas. Amelia stared at him, watching this. Composed, ruthless businessmen transform into something that looked almost human, almost vulnerable. What did she do to you? She asked quietly. Ryan froze at the door, his hand on the handle. For a heartbeat, she thought he might actually answer. Instead, he looked back at her with eyes like winter storms. She loved me, he said simply. And then she left. The pain in those 5 words hit Amelia like a physical blow. Suddenly, everything about Ryan Gray made terrible, perfect sense. The emotional walls, the need for control. The way he turned everything into a transaction, as if human connection were just another business deal to be negotiated and managed. Ryan, she started, but he was already opening the door. The car's waiting. We have exactly 18 minutes before she realizes I'm here. As they fled through the hotel's manicured gardens like fugitives from some unspoken crime, Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just witnessed something important. Something that explained why a man who had everything was so determined to feel nothing at all. The Tesla pulled away from the Beverly Hills Hotel with the smooth acceleration of escape velocity, leaving behind the Pink Palace and whatever ghosts Ryan Gray wasn't ready to face. But as they merged into the endless stream of LA traffic, Amelia realized they couldn't outrun everything. Some secrets, she was beginning to understand, followed you wherever you went. The safe house turned out to be a modernist glass temple perched on the cliffs of Malibu, where the Pacific Ocean stretched toward Japan and the sunset painted the sky in shades of amber and blood. Ryan had made 3 phone calls during the drive, and somehow an entire household had materialized around them within an hour. Staff who moved like shadows, stocking refrigerators and preparing bedrooms as if Billionaire witness protection was a routine Tuesday evening service. "Explain this to me again," Amelia said, standing on the deck that jutted out over the cliff like the prow of a ship. "You're hiding from your own mother in a house that probably costs more per night than most people make in a year." "I'm not hiding." Ryan emerged from the kitchen with 2 glasses of wine that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "I'm strategically relocating until she loses interest and returns to whatever European spa she's currently calling home." "That sounds exactly like hiding. It's tactical avoidance." Amelia accepted the wine, inhaling the complex bouquet of something that tasted like liquid velvet and poor financial decisions. "How long has it been since you've seen her?" 3 years, 2 months, 16 days. The answer came without hesitation, as if he'd been counting. Not that anyone's keeping track. "Ryan." "She left when I was 16, he said suddenly, staring out at the ocean as if it held answers to questions he'd never learned how to ask. "Just vanished one morning while I was at school. No note, no explanation, no forwarding address. I came home to an empty house and a trust fund that would activate when I turned 18. The wine turned to ash in Amelia's mouth. "That's horrible. That's business." But his voice cracked slightly on the word business, revealing the 16-year-old. Boy still hiding behind the billionaire's armor? She'd been planning it for months. Had lawyers draw up papers, accountants arrange the finances, private investigators ensure I'd be adequately supervised until I reached majority age. Supervised by who? Myself? Mostly. The occasional housekeeper. Tutor when my grades started. Slipping. He took a long sip of wine, and Amelia watched his throat work as he swallowed. Turns out abandonment is an excellent motivator for academic achievement. The casual way he delivered this devastating information made Amelia's chest ache. She'd grown up with chaos and financial stress, but she'd never doubted that her family loved her. The idea of a child methodically abandoned by the one person who should have protected him was almost incomprehensible. "What happened when you turned 18? "I used the trust fund to buy my first property, condemned warehouse in Queens that I converted into luxury lofts. Sold them for 3 times what I'd invested, used the profits to buy 2 more buildings. Then 4, then 8. His smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Turns out having no emotional attachments makes you exceptionally good at business." "Who knew? And she just stayed away all this time." "Oh no, she resurfaces periodically. Usually when she needs money. When some tabloid photographer captures her stumbling out of a Monaco casino looking like she's been embalmed. Then suddenly I'm her beloved son again, and she simply must see me, must reconnect, must heal the terrible wounds of our past." The bitterness in his voice was so concentrated it was almost radioactive. "But you never see her." "I learned early that people don't change, Miss Bennett. They just get better at hiding their fundamental nature." He turned to face her fully, and the dying sunlight turned his pale blue eyes into something molten and dangerous. The woman who abandoned a 16-year-old boy doesn't magically transform into a nurturing mother figure just because she's had a few years to consider the error of her ways. Amelia set down her wine glass and stepped closer to him. Close. Enough to smell his cologne mixed with salt air and something that was purely, devastatingly him. "You know what I think? I'm sure you're going to tell me. I think you're terrified that if you see her again, you might forgive her. If you forgive her, you'll have to admit that you've spent half your life building walls that might not be necessary anymore. Ryan went very still. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? Amelia reached out and touched his arm, feeling the tension coiled beneath expensive fabric. I think you've been so busy protecting yourself from being hurt again that you've forgotten how to let anyone close enough to matter. And what makes you such an expert on my psychological profile, Dr. Bennett? Because I recognize the signs? I've been doing the same thing for years, just in reverse. Meaning instead of building walls, I've been building bridges to nowhere, accepting scraps of affection from people who don't deserve me, settling for relationships that are safe and comfortable and ultimately meaningless because I'm terrified of wanting something real and having it disappear. They stared at each other across the 2 feet of space that might as well have been an ocean. The sun had disappeared into the Pacific, leaving them in the blue-gray twilight that made everything seem possible and dangerous. Why are you telling me this? Ryan asked. Because in the past 24 hours, you've managed to make me feel more alive than I have in years. And that terrifies me almost as much as it apparently terrifies you, Amelia. Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer or a curse. She couldn't tell which. I should go to bed, she said, but made no move to leave. You should. We have an early meeting tomorrow. We do. This is complicated enough without adding personal feelings to the mix. It is, but neither of them moved. They stood frozen in the space between intention and action, between the people they'd been before this moment and whoever they might become after. Ryan's phone buzzed against the glass table, breaking the spell. He glanced at it, and his entire body went rigid. What is it? Text. From her, picked up the phone with the care of someone handling live ammunition. She says she knows. I'm in Los Angeles. She says she's not leaving until we talk. Maybe that's not such a terrible thing. You don't understand. When Elizabeth Gray decides she wants something, she doesn't stop until she gets it. She'll camp outside every property I own, call every business associate I have, turn my entire life into a public spectacle until I capitulate. So what do you want to do? Ryan looked at her with an expression that was equal parts desperation and determination. I want to disappear. Really disappear. Somewhere she can't find us. Can't follow us. Can't turn whatever this is between you and me into another weapon in her psychological arsenal. Us. Don't pretend you haven't felt it too. Whatever's happening here, it's bigger than a business arrangement. It's bigger than $50,000 in a delayed flight and your accidental sabotage of my carefully ordered life. He was right, and they both knew it.
Oh.
Something had shifted between them. Something that felt as inevitable as gravity and twice as dangerous. Where would we go? Ryan's smile was wild and reckless, and utterly unlike the controlled businessman she'd met at JFK. Ever been to Big Sur? No, neither have I, but I hear it's beautiful this time of year. More importantly, it's 6 hours north of Los Angeles and completely off my mother's radar. Amelia looked out at the Pacific. Her stars were beginning to pierce the darkening sky like pinpricks of light through velvet. In 12 hours, she'd gone from accidentally grounding an aircraft to fleeing across California with a billionaire, who was slowly revealing himself to be far more human than she'd ever imagined. This is insane, she said. Completely. Your mother will find us eventually. Probably. And when she does, this whole thing is going to explode in ways we can't predict or control. Amelia turned to face him fully, seeing her own reckless hope reflected in his pale blue eyes. When do we leave? The Pacific Coast Highway at dawn was a ribbon of asphalt threading between emerald mountains and endless ocean. Amelia pressed her face against the passenger window of Ryan's Porsche, watching fog roll off the water like the breath of sleeping giants. They'd left Malibu at 5 a.m., fleeing north toward Big Sur with the urgency of lovers in a Shakespearean tragedy. She was beginning to realize might not be far from the truth. Tell me about your family, Ryan said, his hands steady on the steering wheel as they navigated a curve that seemed to hang suspended over the Pacific. Why? Because in approximately 4 hours, we're going to be alone together in what my assistant assures me is an extremely isolated cabin. And I'd prefer to know something about you beyond your impressive talent for aviation sabotage. Amelia laughed despite the butterflies performing aerial acrobatics in her stomach. My parents immigrated from Colombia when I was 3. My father works construction. My mother cleans houses for wealthy families in Westchester. They sacrificed everything so I could go to college and become the first person in our family to work in an office instead of someone else's kitchen. And now you're sitting in a car that costs more than their annual salary, running away too. Big Sur with a man you met yesterday. Irony isn't lost on me. Do you think they'd approve? Amelia considered this as they passed through a tunnel carved directly through the mountainside, emerging into sunlight so golden it felt like divine intervention. My mother would take one look at you and know exactly what kind of trouble you represent. She has supernatural instincts about men who are bad for her daughters. And your father? Would probably ask how much money you make, decide you're too rich to be trusted, then spend the next hour lecturing you about the dignity of honest work. He sounds like a wise man, he is, which is why I haven't called to tell them where I am. They drove in companionable silence for a while, the ocean stretching toward infinity on their left, while redwood forests climbed the mountains on their right. It was the kind of scenery that belonged on postcards and in movies about people whose lives were more dramatic than reality typically allowed. I have a confession, Ryan said as they approached the town of Carmel. Should I be worried? The cabin we're staying in? I bought it yesterday. Amelia stared at him. You bought a house yesterday? 3 phone calls? Cash offer? It's amazing. What people will do when you don't give them time to think about it. That's completely insane. I'm beginning to notice that's a theme with us. The cabin turned out to be a Frank Lloyd Wright fever dream perched on a cliff that seemed to exist in permanent conversation with the sky. Floor 2 ceiling windows offered 360-degree views of wilderness so pristine it looked like the world's first morning. The architecture seemed to grow organically from the landscape, as if the building had been carved from the mountain itself, rather than imposed upon it. This is what you consider a cabin? Amelia stood in the living room, watching hawks circle, thermals high above the redwood canopy. I may have undersold it slightly. Ryan, this is a museum. There's probably a plaque somewhere commemorating the architectural significance of the bathroom. Actually, there are 3 bathrooms, and 2 of them do have plaques. She turned to find him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. The morning light streaming through the windows turned his dark hair to bronze and highlighted the sharp planes of his face in ways that made her mouth go dry. Why did you really bring me here? She asked. Because yesterday morning I was a man who had everything mapped out, controlled, predictable. And then you locked me in an airplane and somehow managed to hijack my entire existence in the process? He moved closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of silver in his blue eyes, close enough to smell his cologne mixed with California sunshine and the lingering salt of ocean air. I spent 16 years teaching myself not to need anyone, not to trust anyone, not to let anyone close enough to matter. His voice was soft, almost conversational, but there was something underneath it that made her pulse hammer against her throat. And then you show up with your stubborn pride and your ridiculous honesty and your complete inability to be impressed by any of the things that usually impress people. Ryan, I'm not finished. He reached up to touch her face, his thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. You want to know why I brought you here? Because for the first time in my adult life, I'm terrified of losing something I never even knew I wanted. The kiss, when it came, was inevitable as gravity and twice as dangerous. His lips were soft against hers, but there was nothing gentle about the way he kissed her. It was desperate and claiming and full of 16 years of carefully controlled longing finally allowed to breathe. Amelia melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt as if she could anchor herself to this moment. This feeling, this man who had somehow managed to become essential to her in less than 48 hours. He tasted like coffee and morning air and possibilities she'd never allowed herself to imagine. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. This is a mistake, he whispered. Probably. I don't do relationships. I don't do emotional attachment. I don't do any of the things that normal people do when they care about someone. I know. I'll hurt you. Maybe not intentionally, but I will. I don't know how to be what you deserve. Amelia pulled back far enough to meet his eyes. What if I don't want what I deserve? What if I want you exactly as you are, complicated and damaged and afraid? Then you're crazier than I thought. Good thing crazy seems to be working for us. His phone rang, shattering the moment like a rock through glass. Ryan closed his eyes as if in physical pain. Don't answer it, Amelia said. If I don't answer, she'll escalate. Trust me, you don't want to see Elizabeth Gray escalate. He picked up the phone, his entire demeanor shifting back into the cold businessman she'd first met at JFK. Mother, even from 3 feet away, Amelia could hear the woman's voice, cultured and sharp as a blade wrapped in silk. Ryan, darling, stop running from me. It's undignified. I'm not running. I'm working in Big Sur. That lovely girl from the airport? Yes, sweetheart, I know exactly where you are. Did you really think you could hide from me in some architectural monument to your emotional unavailability? Ryan's face went white. How did you? The same way I know she's standing right there listening to every word of this conversation. Technology is wonderful, isn't it? GPS tracking, credit card monitoring, facial recognition software. The modern world makes it so difficult. To truly disappear? Amelia felt ice forming in her veins as the implications hit her. What do you want? Ryan's voice was steady, but she could see the muscle jumping in his jaw. To talk. To explain. To tell you things you should have known years ago but weren't ready to hear. I'm not ready now. Yes, you are. Because you finally found something worth protecting, and you're going to need to understand exactly what you're protecting it from. The line went dead, leaving them staring at each other across a silence that felt like the space between lightning and thunder. What did she mean? Amelia asked. I don't know, but knowing my mother, we're about to find out whether we want to or not. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Amelia could see a black sedan winding its way up the mountain road toward their supposedly secret refuge. The sunlight that had seemed so golden an hour ago now felt harsh and unforgiving. She's coming. Here, of course, she is. Ryan's laugh was bitter as winter wind. Elizabeth Gray doesn't make empty threats. What do we do? He looked at her for a long moment, and she could see him weighing options. Calculating risks, preparing for a battle she didn't understand. We face whatever she came here to say together. Are you sure? No. But I'm tired of running from ghosts. And I'm tired of letting her poison everything I touch before it has a chance to grow. The sedan was getting closer, and Amelia could make out the silhouette of a woman in the passenger seat. Even from this distance, there was something regal and predatory about her posture that made Amelia's skin crawl. Ryan. Yeah. Whatever she tells us, whatever secrets she's been keeping, promise me something. What? Promise me that we'll decide together what happens next. Not her, not your past, not the fear of getting hurt, U.S. He pulled her close, holding her against his chest as if she were the only solid thing in a world that had suddenly become quicksand. Promise. The sedan pulled into their driveway, and Elizabeth Gray stepped out into the California sunshine like a queen surveying a conquered territory. She was beautiful in the way that expensive things were beautiful, all sharp edges and perfect surfaces that revealed nothing of what lay beneath. She looked up at the house, and even through the tinted windows, Amelia could feel the weight of her gaze like ice against her skin. Ready? Ryan asked. No. Good. Neither am I. They watched his mother approach the front door, and Amelia realized that everything that had happened between them up until this moment had been prologued. Whatever came next would determine not just whether they had a future together, but whether either of them survived the wreckage of Ryan's past intact. Elizabeth Gray entered the cabin like winter personified, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floors with the precision of a metronome counting down to execution. She was smaller than Amelia had expected, but there was something about her presence that seemed to consume all the oxygen in the room. Hello, Ryan. Her voice carried the faint trace of an accent that might have been European sophistication or carefully cultivated affectation. You look well. Successful. Cold as ever, Elizabeth. Ryan's voice could have frozen fire. You have exactly 10 minutes to say whatever you came here to say before I call security and have you removed from my property. Your property. She smiled, and it was sharp enough to cut glass. Yes. I heard you bought this place yesterday. Of Quite the romantic gesture for someone who claims not to believe in love. Her gaze shifted to Amelia, taking in everything from her discount designer. Dressed to her carefully applied makeup with the ruthless efficiency of a predator assessing prey. And you must be the young woman who's managed to accomplish what a dozen therapists and countless business rivals never could. You've made my son feel something. Don't. Ryan stepped between them, his body coiled with protective tension. Out of her? Game you're playing, leave her out of it. Oh, darling, she's not separate from this. She's the entire reason I'm here. Elizabeth moved to the wall of windows overlooking the Pacific, her silhouette sharp against the morning light. Tell me, Miss Bennett, what has my son told you about why I left? Amelia glanced at Ryan, seeing the warning in his eyes, but something in Elizabeth's tone made her answer anyway. That you abandoned him when he was 16 without explanation. Or goodbye. Is that what you believe happened? That's what he told me. And did he also tell you that I've been trying to contact him for 18 years? That I've sent letters he's never opened, made phone calls he's never returned, hired investigators to ensure he was safe and successful from a distance he demanded I maintain? That's enough. Ryan's voice was deadly quiet. Don't you dare try. To rewrite history, to make yourself look like the victim? I'm not the victim, sweetheart. None of us are. Elizabeth turned from the window, and for the first time, Amelia could see something raw and painful beneath her perfect composure. But I'm not the villain either, not entirely. She reached into her purse and withdrew a manila envelope, thick, with documents and photographs that looked like they'd been handled many times over many years. The truth, Ryan, is that I left because staying would have destroyed you. And I've kept my distance because you made it very clear that my presence in your life was more harmful than my absence. What are you talking about? Your father. Words hit the room like a physical blow. Ryan went absolutely still, his face draining of color. My father is dead. It's been since I was 5. Your father, Elizabeth continued relentlessly, is very much alive. And for the past 23 years, he's been systematically destroying every attempt I've made to build a relationship with you. She opened the envelope and scattered its contents across the coffee table. Letters, photographs, legal documents, medical records, all bearing dates that span decades. Marcus Gray didn't die in a car accident when you were 5, Ryan. He faked his death to escape prosecution for embezzlement and tax evasion, then spent the next several years building a new identity in Switzerland, while I raised you alone, and tried to explain why Daddy wasn't coming home. Amelia sank onto the couch, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. Ryan remained frozen, staring at the evidence of his life's central lie scattered across expensive furniture like the pieces of a shattered mirror. When you were 16, Elizabeth continued, her voice growing softer, more broken, he came back. Not to reconcile or to be a father, but to claim his share of the family fortune I'd been protecting for you. He threatened to have me arrested. As an accessory to his crimes, unless I disappeared from your life entirely? You're lying. I wish I were. She picked up a photograph and handed it to him. This was taken 3 months ago in Geneva. Your father, very much alive, living under the name Marcus Kellerman. He's been monitoring your success, your business dealings, even your personal relationships. Every time I've tried to contact you, he's intercepted the communication. Every time I've attempted to explain, he's made sure you never received the message. Ryan stared at the photograph with the expression of a man watching his entire worldview crumble in real time. The face looking back at him was older, harder, but unmistakably familiar. Features he'd seen in mirrors for 34 years, aged by guilt and greed and the kind of moral decay that ate people from the inside out. He's been blackmailing you for 18 years. Among other things, the man you've spent your entire adult life trying not to become? You're already nothing like him, sweetheart. You never were. Amelia watched Ryan process this information, seeing the careful walls he'd built around his heart begin to crack and crumble. The abandonment that had defined him, the fear of being left that had driven him to push everyone away, the cold calculation that had protected him from feeling too much, all of it built on a foundation of lies. Why tell me now? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Elizabeth looked at Amelia, then back at her son. Because yesterday I received a call from his lawyer. Your father is dying, Ryan. Cancer. 6 months at most. And his final act of selfishness is demanding a reunion, wanting to explain himself, seeking some kind of deathbed absolution for the damage he's caused. And you think I should see him? I think you should choose. For the first time in your life, you get to decide what kind of relationship you want with your past, with me, with the future you're building. She gestured toward Amelia, but more. Importantly, you get to decide without his shadow hanging over everything you touch. The silence that followed was profound and terrible. Amelia could hear the ocean crashing against the cliffs below, the wind moving through the redwoods, the sound of a man's entire understanding of himself being rebuilt from the ground up. Do you want from me? Ryan asked finally. Nothing you're not ready to give. But I'd like the chance to know you, if you'll let me. And I'd like you to know that every day for 18 years, I've been proud of the man you became despite everything that was taken from you. Elizabeth gathered the photographs and documents, leaving them on the table like gifts he could choose, to accept or reject. I'll be staying at the Ventana Inn until Sunday. If you want to talk, really talk, you know where to find me. She moved toward the door, then paused. Miss Bennett, you should know that my son has never brought a woman anywhere. That mattered to him. The fact that you're here, in this place he bought specifically to escape from everything that's ever hurt him, tells me more about his feelings for you than any declaration ever could. After she left, Ryan and Amelia sat in silence for a long time, watching the fog roll in from the Pacific like nature's own form of emotional processing. Are you okay? Amelia asked finally. I don't know. He picked up one of the photographs, studying the face of the father he'd mourned and hated and tried so desperately not to become. 34 years of my life built on a lie. 18 years of hating the wrong person for the wrong reasons. What are you going to do? About my father? Nothing. He made his choices, and I've made mine. Not interested in deathbed confessions or explanations that come 28 years too late. And your mother. Ryan looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, there was something soft and unguarded in his expression. I think I'd like to try. Slowly, carefully. But I think I'd like to try. Good. And us? He reached for her hand, threading their fingers together with the hesitant wonder of someone discovering touch for the first time. What do we do about us? Amelia smiled, feeling something bright and hopeful unfurling in her chest. From here, no more running, no more walls, no more letting other people's damage define our choices. It won't be easy. I've spent 18 years perfecting the art of emotional unavailability. Lucky for you, I've spent 28 years perfecting the art of stubborn persistence. Is that what this is? Persistence? Among other things. She leaned forward and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promises neither of them was quite ready to make out loud. I love you, Ryan Gray. All of you. The broken parts, the brilliant parts, the parts that are still figuring out how to be human. I love you too. The words seemed to surprise him as much as they surprised her. I don't know how to do this. How to be someone's person. How to let you matter this much without waiting for the other shoe to drop. We'll figure it out together. 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 6 months later, they were married on the same cliff where his mother had finally told him the truth about his past. Elizabeth Gray walked her son down an aisle of Pacific Coast wildflowers, while Amelia's parents wept happy tears in the front row. The ceremony was small and perfect and completely unlike anything either of them had imagined for themselves. The wedding cake was served in the cabin that had become their weekend retreat, the place where they'd learned that love wasn't about perfect people finding each other, but about imperfect people choosing to build something beautiful together despite their scars. As the sun set over the Pacific and their guests danced on the deck overlooking infinity, Ryan pulled Amelia close and whispered in her ear, "Thank you." For what? For accidentally hijacking my plane? For refusing to be impressed by my money? For seeing through all my carefully constructed walls to whatever was worth saving underneath? Thank you for being worth the effort. They danced as the stars came out over Big Sur. Two people who had found each other in the wreckage of delayed flights and family secrets, and the strange. Alchemy that turns strangers into soulmates when the timing is finally perfectly right. In the distance, the Pacific Ocean stretched toward tomorrow, carrying away the ghosts of who they used to be and bringing them closer to whoever they were brave enough to become together. The end, ***, like this video if the story touched your heart. Subscribe for more emotional tales and share with someone who believes in the power of true love. And let us know in the comments. We love connecting with our global community of romance lovers.